It all happened in one night. The back door was already open when I got home. Not wide open, just an inch. Just enough. I stood there on the porch for a full 10 seconds, keys still in my hand, staring at that gap, trying to remember. Trying to convince myself I had a reasonable explanation sitting somewhere in the back of my mind that I just hadn't found yet. I couldn't find one. I never used the back door. I always used the front. Always. That's just my thing, my routine, the way. I've operated in this house for 3 years. I could count on one hand the number of times I've gone out the back. So why was it open? Why was it open right now, at 11 at night, when I'd been gone since 7 in the morning? I pushed it wider with 2 fingers. The hinge made that low. Slow creak it always makes. The kitchen was dark. That wasn't unusual. I got home late that night, just after 11. So the whole house was unlit except for the little light above the stove that I leave on a timer. Yellow and dim, throwing just enough glow to see the counters. Everything looked exactly the way I'd left it that morning. Coffee mug on the right side of the sink. Dish towel folded neatly over the oven handle. Chair tucked in under the table. Fruit bowl in the center with the 2 apples I kept forgetting to eat. Everything looked right. Every single thing in its place. So why didn't it feel right? Why was my body doing that thing where it refuses to fully step inside? I told myself I'd left the door open by accident. Maybe I'd taken the trash out before work and just didn't pull it all the way shut. Simple explanation. Completely believable. Happens to people all the time. I stepped inside, locked it behind me, set my bag down on the counter, and started getting ready for bed. I even laughed a little under my breath. You're tired, I told myself. You're overworked, and you're tired, and you're turning a stuck door latch into something it isn't. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I heard it. A sound so faint I wasn't even completely sure I'd heard it at all. Like something shifting its weight. Fabric moving against wood, maybe, or a footstep. A very deliberate, very careful footstep. Trying hard not to be one, I froze with the toothbrush still in my mouth and turned off the faucet and stood. Completely still in the silence. Nothing. I waited a full 30 seconds, maybe longer. Not moving. Barely breathing. Nothing came. No follow-up sound. No creak. No voice. Just the house sitting around me the way it always does. I rinsed, spat, told myself I was ridiculous. Old houses make sounds. Mine makes them constantly. The frames settling, the pipes ticking, the wind catching the siding in that specific way that sounds almost like someone knocking. I know every single one of those sounds. I've memorized this house's language over 3 years. That sound was probably just the house. Probably. I went to bed. I woke up at 2:17 in the morning and I don't know why. There was no noise that woke me. No nightmare, no alarm, nothing dramatic. I just opened my eyes and I was completely, fully, aggressively awake, the kind of awake you usually only feel at 2 in the afternoon, not in the absolute dead of night. My body was alert before my mind had any chance to catch up. That old animal part of the brain, the part that exists specifically to notice things before you consciously understand them, was already firing, already saying something. I just didn't know it yet. I lay completely still. Didn't move. Didn't reach for my phone. Didn't shift the blanket. I just listened with every part of myself pointed outward into the dark. The house was quiet. Too quiet, actually, now that I was paying attention. Because there's always a baseline noise, isn't there? The low hum of the refrigerator. The occasional car moving down the street outside. a dog barking 2 or 3 blocks over, the furnace clicking on. Something. There's always something. But right then, in that specific moment, there was absolutely nothing. Complete, sealed silence. It was like the house itself was holding its breath. Like everything in it had gone still at the same time, all at once, for a reason I couldn't name. And then I noticed the closet door. It was open, not all the way. Maybe 6 inches. Maybe 8. Just enough to create a gap, a long, dark, vertical gap that I was now staring directly at from my bed. And here's the thing. I close that door every single night before I get into bed. Not because I'm superstitious, not because I'm scared of the dark like a child. Just routine. Habit I've had since I was maybe 7 years old. I close the closet. I close the bedroom door halfway. I get under the covers. Same sequence every single night for my entire adult life. I had done it that night. I remembered doing it. I remembered the small click of the latch. That door was not open when I fell asleep. I kept staring at the gap. The darkness inside it was total, the kind of deep black that your eyes try to adjust to and can't. I know it's just a closet. I know what's in there. My clothes, my shoes, an extra blanket on the shelf, a box of old photos in the corner. I know every inch of it. But something about the specific quality of that darkness, the depth of it, made every rational thought I had suddenly feel like it was operating at a distance. I reached for my phone. 2:17 a.m., no notifications. I turned on the flashlight and aimed it at the opening. Clothes hanging in a row. Shoes on the floor in pairs. The shelf above with the folded blankets exactly where they always are. The box of photos undisturbed in the corner. Nothing out of place. Just my things, exactly where my things have always been. I held the light there for a long time anyway. Then I let out a slow breath and set the phone back down. I was catastrophizing the door, the strange wake-up, the sound I may or may not have heard in the bathroom. I was just anxious and exhausted and living alone in a house that was over 80 years old. I had a long week behind me and an even longer one ahead. I was manufacturing a problem. I rolled over and pulled the blanket up and closed my eyes and told myself firmly to go back to sleep. I was almost there, right on that warm edge of unconsciousness, when I smelled it. Cologne. Men's cologne. Something woody and sharp and completely, entirely unfamiliar. The smell hit me so clearly that my eyes opened on their own. I sat up. I didn't decide to sit up. My body just did it. Because that smell had absolutely no business being in my bedroom. I don't wear cologne. I don't own any. I live alone. I have lived alone in this house for 3 full years and no one else has a key, and I had not had anyone over in weeks. That smell had no explanation, and it wasn't faint. It wasn't a trace drifting in from somewhere. It was present and close, the way a smell is when its source is right near you. The way you notice someone's perfume when they lean across you to grab. Something that kinda close. I stood up. I turned on the bedroom light. I got on my hands and knees and looked under the bed. Nothing. Just the floor and a pair of socks I'd kicked under there at some point. I threw the closet open fully and pushed every piece of clothing aside with both hands. I checked behind the door. I went to the bathroom, pulled back the shower curtain in one fast motion, checked the cabinet under the sink. Then I went through the rest of the house room by room, turning on every light I passed. The spare bedroom, under that bed, inside that closet, the living room, behind the couch, the kitchen, the small coat closet by the front door, every room, every hiding space I could think of. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Every window locked. Back door still locked, the way I'd left it. Front door locked. Not a single person anywhere in this house. I stood in the middle of the kitchen under the bright overhead light, feeling my own heartbeat in my throat and trying to understand what was happening to me. I sat on the couch with every light in the house on and picked up my phone. I thought about calling my sister. I thought about calling a friend. But it was almost 3 a.m. and I had nothing concrete to tell them. Just a smell. Just an open closet door. Just a feeling that sat deep in my stomach and wouldn't move. I'd had anxiety before. I knew its shape. I put the phone in my lap and focused on breathing slowly. That's when I saw the chair. The kitchen chair. The one that had been tucked neatly under the table when I'd come home. I had specifically noticed it. Specifically registered it as being in its place, was now pulled out. Not far. Maybe 10, 12 inches. Just enough for someone to have sat down in it and then stood up without bothering to push it back. I had not moved that chair. I had set my bag on the counter and walked to the bathroom and gone to bed. I had not gone near the kitchen table. I stood up very slowly from the couch. The kind of slow that happens when your whole body understands something before your conscious mind is ready to accept it. And then from directly above me, I heard it. A creak, not the settling kind. Not a pipe expanding in the wall. A weighted, deliberate creak. The specific sound of something with real mass, shifting position on a wooden floor. It came from the spare bedroom. The one directly above the kitchen. The one I had walked through 8 minutes ago and found entirely empty. I went completely still. Another creak, then another after a short pause. Slow, careful, moving toward the door of that room. Moving into the hallway up there. Moving toward the top of the stairs. I didn't think. I grabbed my keys off the counter and I ran. Straight to the front door, one hand yanking the deadbolt, the other pulling the handle. And then I was outside in the cold, dark air and I didn't stop on the porch. I ran to my car at the curb, got in, locked all 4 doors, and sat there with the engine off, shaking so hard I could hear my own breath hitting the inside of the windshield. I called 911. 2 officers arrived in under 10 minutes. I watched them go inside from the front seat of my car. I tracked every light coming on through the windows as they moved room to room, floor to floor, working through the whole house in a pattern. I sat there watching and waiting and telling myself that they would find something, that they would come out and confirm that I had not imagined this night. They came back out and told me the house was clear. No one inside. No signs of forced entry on any window or either door. No signs of disturbance. One of them, younger guy, calm and unhurried, walked me through everything I'd described. He said, old houses settle in ways that sound like footsteps. He said scent travels through shared ductwork in ways that feel disorienting at night. He said the chair and the closet were very likely things I'd done on autopilot without registering them consciously. He wasn't dismissive about any of it. He was kind about it, actually. He said they'd make extra passes on the street through the rest of the night. I went back inside. I did not sleep. I sat on the couch until the sky went gray and then pink, and I called my sister as soon as it was a reasonable hour and told her everything. She came over. She walked through every room with me, opened every door, looked in every corner. She agreed. The house looked completely normal. She made coffee and sat with me, and by the time she left around noon, I had talked myself down to something approaching calm. It was anxiety. It was stress. It was an old house and a tired mind and a night that got away from me. That was Saturday. On Sunday evening, I was lying on the couch scrolling through my phone when I remembered the camera. I'd installed a small security camera in the living room, about a year earlier after a package was stolen off my porch. I'd set it on the third shelf of the bookcase, aimed at the front door, and more or less forgotten about it after that. It records continuously and stores everything to a cloud account in 30-minute segments. I hadn't opened the app in months. I opened it. I found Saturday night's recordings. I found the 2 a.m. segment and pressed play. For the first several minutes, nothing. Just the empty living room, dark and still. The pale yellow-gray light from the street filtering through the window the way it always does. And then I appeared. On screen, coming down the stairs, moving frantically from room to room, turning on lights, checking under furniture, looking more and more unraveled with every pass. I watched myself from above for a minute and felt a hollow kind of embarrassment. I was about to close the app. Then I saw it in the upper right corner of the frame, the fourth shelf of the bookcase, the one directly above my camera, the one where I keep a row of books and 3 or 4 framed photos. I've had the same things on that shelf for 2 years. I know exactly what belongs there. But sitting between the photo of my sister and the photo of me at a concert 2 summers ago, there was something small and dark that I had never put there. I paused the recording. I got up from the couch and walked to the bookshelf. A button. Small, black, perfectly circular. I picked it up and turned it over. On the back, a lens. Tiny. Nearly invisible. A pinhole lens set flush with the surface and along the edge, a near invisible seam where a micro battery would be seated. It was a camera. Someone had placed a camera on my shelf, pointed directly at my couch, pointed at the exact spot where I sit every single evening, where I'd been sitting 20 minutes ago, where I had sat for hours the night before, alone, in my own home. Believing completely and without question that I was safe. I don't know how long it had been there. I don't know what it recorded. I don't know where that footage went or who received it or how many nights they watched. I don't know how they got in. I don't know when. I don't know if they were there the same night I heard the footsteps or if that small black button had been sitting on my shelf for weeks or months before that, silently watching me eat my dinner and talk on the phone and fall asleep on the couch thinking I was completely alone. I called the police again. Different officers this time, and they took it seriously immediately. They bagged the device. They processed the room for prints. A detective took a full written statement. She told me, in a flat and careful voice, that these devices are typically used in stalking cases. She said it exactly like that. Stalking cases, and I remember the word landing somewhere in the center of my chest and not leaving. They identified a suspect. Someone connected to a person from my past, a difficult situation I'd put behind me about 2 years ago. But they couldn't build enough for charges. The device had been wiped clean, no prints, no stored footage, likely transmitting live to somewhere they couldn't trace. Whoever did this was methodical, patient. They knew exactly what they were doing and they knew how not to get caught. I moved out within the month. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. Here's the part that still finds me at 2 a.m., even now. In a different city, in a different home, with new locks and a new alarm and neighbors whose names I actually know. After everything happened, I went back through all of my security camera footage. Not just that Saturday night, all of it, weeks of it. I was looking for anything I might have missed. I found it on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks before any of this started. The timestamp reads for 43 a.m. I'm asleep upstairs. The house is completely dark, and in the recording, for 11 seconds, there is a shape moving across the far edge of the frame near the hallway entrance. I have watched that clip over 50 times. I have shown it to people I trust, people with no reason to indulge me, and every single one of them has gone quiet afterward, because it doesn't move like a shadow from a passing car. It doesn't behave like a reflection or a trick of light. It moves like a person moves, measured, deliberate, aware that it needs to stay quiet, aware that it needs to stay slow. Someone was in my house 3 full weeks before I knew anything was wrong. 3 weeks of sleeping in a house that was not only mine. 3 weeks of moving through my days, cooking in that kitchen, sitting on that couch, living my entire private life inside those 4 walls, while someone else knew the layout, knew my schedule, knew when I left and when I came back and when I was most deeply asleep. 3 weeks of being watched in the one place on earth where you are supposed to be untouchable. And then there is the last part, the detail I always pause on, the one I keep turning over no matter how much I wish I could just leave it alone. That shape in the recording, that slow, careful shape moving through the dark living room at 4:43 in the morning while I slept 16 feet above it. Right before it reaches the edge of the frame and disappears, it stops, goes completely still for 2, maybe 3 seconds, and then, in the last moment before it's gone entirely, it looks up, directly at the camera on the shelf, not at the room, not toward the stairs, at the camera, at that specific spot on the bookcase, with a kind of precision that doesn't happen by accident, like it knew the camera was there the entire time, like it had always known, like the only one in that house who didn't know everything was me.